time for convening has arrived, and before I start this evening's proceedings, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege to my mom and dad always told me when you make a mistake in private, you deal with it in private. When you make a mistake in public, you deal with it publicly. And last week during the art exhibit here in Sandy Springs in City Hall, staff always gives me my talking points and a run of show. And I've done this so many times, I've gotten into a bad habit of just skimming and pulling out a couple of talking points and not reading everything that staff gives me. So last week there was supposed to be a presentation, and I, in my infinite wisdom, decided that it was not proper, and so I injected myself into that, and I shouldn't have. So by not following the instructions of staff and the information that I received, I messed up. So I want to apologize to the sponsors and everybody because, it won't happen again. I'll read stuff going forward and make sure I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I apologize to all the participants and particularly the young lady that I interrupted. So with that, I will call this meeting to order, and we've got the work session. Madam City Manager, it's the first item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight on your work session is a carry forward. Is that a little bit better?
Yeah.
Sorry. The item that's before you on the work session tonight is a carry forward from last Tuesday's council retreat. Jonathan Livingston, our building official, is going to give council an update on the implementation of our multifamily housing inspection program. So, Mr. Livingston.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Jonathan Livingston. I'm the building official for the City of Sandy Springs, and I appreciate you taking the time for me to give you an update on where we are with the MRH ordinance. Oh, here we go. Perfect. All right, so what have we done? So obviously we've been working on this ordinance. It took well over a year to develop. It was a joint collaboration with building department, code enforcement, as well as the fire marshal's office. We were trying to consolidate all the various code sections and incorporate new code sections that we felt were necessary based on historical data from fire and other things. Just kind of give you a quick summary of what some of those highlights of those changes were. So we reviewed statistical data and fire trends that we were seeing repeatedly at some of these complexes, and we determined that we needed to be a little proactive about some of these things. So we added automatic door closures, vertical chase protection, as well as exterior siding that is non-combustible. What we found is, particularly the vertical chase protection, is when we have these fires, they usually originate inside a unit, and they go up the chase, the cavities in the walls, and they go straight up into the attic, and then it spreads. In like 20 minutes, the entire roof is gone. So trying to close all those gaps, those holes, it should help minimize the spread of that fire and limit damage. So that's why we added that to it. We all know about intermittent paint as one of the requirements. That's kind of was the catalyst that started a lot of this MRH ordinance as we know it today. There were some limitations with the paint, but so we decided it's coming time for the paint to be reapplied. So we decided to give the property owners, another option, a couple other options. So obviously they can reapply the intermittent paint. The other option they have is install a residential sprinkler system, or they have an option to install a fire barrier, which is essentially like a fire wall. So they can install a fire wall up in the attic because we know the problem with apartments is the attic. Once the attic goes, the whole building goes. So what we decided to do, working with the fire marshal and experience that they see on site putting out the fires, is we decided to basically install a fire barrier between two units to contain and isolate the fire in that specific space. So we're going to put some hatches in the public corridors so they have easy access to get up in there and do their job. Part of this process, we collaborated with. It wasn't just us. We've been working with GIS and with Revenue, specifically Revenue. This is all linked back to their business license. So we worked with Revenue Department to coordinate exactly what some of the requirements are, and I think I have a little bit of that here shortly. But overall, we just had to go over everything to give it a good once over to coordinate everything to make it match really what our inspection needs of the city are. And then you guys thankfully adopted everything back in September, so we've been working on this for a few months now. So that's where we were. Where are we now? So we want to give you guys an update of what's happened. All right, so we reran our stats to see exactly how many apartments and broke it down. So we have about 96 properties. We had a different number before because some of the properties had multiple parcels, so it showed up as 2. So we just made that simple to combine them, say there's actually 1 apartment complex. So as it stands right now, we have 6 properties. 90% of those are rental properties, apartments, which represents about 95%, and then we have 6 which are retirement independent living, which represents roughly 5% of the total number. Note here, you see we have retirement independent living was just exclusive apartments basically, but assisted living and memory care are not part of the MRH ordinance because they already provide some sort of 24-hour care oversight over the entire property. So some of the stats, we have over 1,300 buildings, roughly 25,000 rental units, a little more than that, 70% over 20 years old, 47% do not have sprinklers, 28 are partially sprinkled, and 25 are partially, and 28 are fully sprinkled. So a big part of what we did was education and training, all right? And that's been the big push that we've been doing since this ordinance was approved. So we have property manager specific training, and we've already given 4 seminars on that. Those seminars start at 9. They've been ending around 11:30, 12 o'clock, depending on Q&A, questions, and what have you. So they're pretty long seminars where we go over it. To date, we've had about 73 out of 96 properties actually attend the seminar, and we're working on the remainder to get them to come in for one more makeup session for them. So our goal is to have everybody 100% in attendance. Alongside of that, we also have CBI training, which is the Certified Building Inspectors. They're the ones that go actually inside the actual apartment units and inspect the inside of those. Do the similar type of training for them, except this is more specific to inspectors. We've had four of those seminars as well every month, October, November, December, and January. And we've had 16 inspectors to date, representing about 10 separate CBI companies. And I think there's more probably that have been calling to come online as well. This is what a sample of what the CBI training. The results that we were getting in the past from the CBI inspection reports were kind of a little bit all over the place as far as what people looked for, what people didn't. So we took all those reports, combined them into one, and we came up with one standard checklist that all CBIs follows. The benefit of this is we get accurate, consistent statistical data that we can track and trend, which is very valuable. When we developed this training, this standard checklist, we had a problem with our software vendor where they were not able to accommodate our needs for this new checklist. So fortunately, the GIS team, Bridget and her team, were great and stepped up and quickly developed some in-house software that we use with our GIS database for the CBI specifically. This is basically the same checklist that you just saw, and it's a pass-fail NA. You can attach photos in and everything. It eliminates the CBIs from having to generate reports because it's all automated that we're doing. Future seminars. We're trying to continue these seminars quarterly. So we just had our January, so our next one's going to be in April, July, and then October for both the property managers and the CBIs. The reason why we're doing this is because more CBIs will come on board. And as we all know, the property managers, they change hands all the time. So to summarize everything, all the 2023 inspections were due at the end of the year, last year, December 31st. All right. Now, because the ordinance, even though it was approved last year, we're only enforcing the remainder of the previous inspections, which is the last 20%. So that's all that's required. The occupational tax certificate, your business license actually expired on December 31st as well, but there's a little grace period that you have until March 31st to actually apply for that. So what does it mean for that property manager as a whole? So what it means is when they come in and apply for their current tax year, which is 2024 certificate, they have to submit their application. They have to submit their property manager certification, which is what we give them after they attend our class, as well as a certificate of compliance, which is once they pass all the inspections and the city's reviewed them and approved them, then you get a certificate of compliance for the year. And then they also have to submit their current certificate of insurance. Once they get all those, then they get their business license. And we've already coordinated and worked with revenue, so they are fully aware of this. We've created something in Asana so they can clearly see without having to go back and check. We're keeping that up to date and live for them to have access to as well. So, questions? Yes, sir.
Second. So we passed this intumescent paint requirement a number of years ago,
Yes, sir.
and it was a phased-in approach so that building owners had, I forget how many years to do it. Are we to the point now where all of the buildings have had intumescent paint one time through?
Yes, there are a couple. So that deadline has come and gone now. I think it was November.
Okay.
So yes, most of them, there are a handful of them that still hadn't. Some of them had some logistical because the installer was sick or whatever, and we gave them a little extension on that. But as far as I know, I think most of those have come into compliance now. Yes, sir.
And do you have to reapply?
One complex left.
Okay. And do you have to reapply that, or once
Yes,
it's
sir.
on, are you okay?
Yeah, so the intumescent paint lasts, depending on the application, the brand, and the thickness, and all that stuff, roughly approximately 5 years.
Okay, so they have to redo that every
They have
5
to
years.
reapply, and most of these are starting to come back because it's been 5 years since that first install for those. So now that's when we gave them some other options, because that's an active system because it's dependent on installation, and also it only comes on when there's a fire. Or it activates when there's a fire. So that's why we gave them the other two options now too. So they can continue to reapply the intumescent paint, or they can come up with a residential sprinkler system, so they have to run the high pressure lines for that, or they can install the fire barrier up in the attic.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes,
And then
sir.
the other question I've got is, these CBI inspectors, they're not city employees, they're private contractors that
Correct.
are
Yeah,
hired
they are
to go do
independent
this.
third party hired by the property manager.
And are there enough of them out there that this can get accomplished?
So far, yes, they're the same group that's been doing it all along,
Okay,
and more have coming along, and actually some of them are starting to staff up because of this.
okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Mr. DiGiulio.
Yes, sir.
When we passed the paint thing, we also talked about putting some canisters up on the hood, the vent hood.
Cooktops. Yes,
Have
that's-
we done anything with that? Have
Oh,
we
yeah,
enforced
that's been in place for a while now, and that's been we don't have any statistical data on that, but we have noticed that the number of fires has gone down because of that. So we can't maybe necessarily attribute it to that, but we're pretty positive that it has contributed to the deficiency or the decline in some of those fires.
Because if I remember correctly, wasn't that a much more economical solution than painting and sprinklering and
it's
such?
two
et
different
cetera?
things. So the painting is for exposed wood. Mainly the attic is really what we're talking about. So any exposed wood has to be protected because it's flammable in case of fire. The canisters that I think you're referring to look like little tuna cans. And they actually go on under the appliance. So it's to minimize appliance fires, cooking fires basically, which can instantly engulf a whole kitchen in a matter of minutes. So if you have a cooking fire, then that canister is directly over it. It's got a little fuse on it, wicks, and then it just drops the same dry suppressant that's inside the fire extinguishers and puts out the fire. When we actually have some photos of some at our seminars that actually shows a discharged canister that put out a fire.
And it's worked pretty well.
It works great. It's like a $40 tuna can, basically.
$40 tuna can?
Yeah, I mean, they're about the size of a tuna can. Yeah, maybe a little bit thicker. They're not that large. There are other ones, depending on how high you are off, that you may have to get a different type. But, yeah, you can go on Amazon and buy them. You buy them in pairs, and they're about $70 a pair, roughly, ballpark.
Ms. Rochelle.
Are all of the apartment complexes complying? And if they don't, what happens? And do they all have business license at this point? They all operating under business license? I thought there was one or two that weren't.
Yeah, so that would be a question for revenue. I cannot answer whether or not they have business license. That's a different department. But definitely moving forward, they won't have it unless they have all the other requirements for the MRH. As far as compliance goes, they're finishing up their last 20% right now. This is kind of like their grace period is January, February, March before the true deadline for your business license. So they're wrapping up their final repairs for that. So hopefully they all get their certificate of compliance. And most of them have gotten their final certificate of compliance for 2023, which is required for your 2024 business license. And now we're just kicking off the 2024, which is the full 100% compliance.
Ms. Mueller.
So just a question. So we have the CBI training, the initial training. Does the program also have like a refresher training every so often that they have to come back and get refreshed on it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yes, To answer your question, yeah. So we wrote it when we developed the code. We said it's an annual training for both the property manager as well as the CBI, because codes will change, staff will change, new inspectors will come on board. So that's when we have, the requirement is for every year. Now we're still, because we just pushed all this out really condensed and tight. We've been really, really busy. But, we haven't quite figured out what the recertification is going to be, whether they're going to come in for a full other class, or maybe we'll have, a little watch a video and take a quick quiz or something like that. We haven't figured out what the recert is going to be, but we're definitely working on that.
Okay. And then I think on one of the slides, I think it was 18, where it had the percentage of the breakdown of the complexes by the number of sprinklers.
Yes.
Some have,
yes.
some don't, some
Right.
are a mix. Is there a list of apartment complexes by district?
We should be able to get
Because
that.
I think there's not, and I think you said there's 96, but 90, but 6 senior living. So I would just be curious, just from a standpoint of understanding and the different districts,
Sure.
which ones I want to say have better coverage than others.
Yeah, well, we could probably break down that. I mean, all that's in the GIS database, so we should be able to isolate which ones are in your districts.
Okay,
And we
thank you.
could be able to get that information to you if you like.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Livingston, thank you very much. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any other items from council? All right, we'll close the work session. I would like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, February 6, 2024. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide a public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meetings. Public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Councilmember Tibby DiGiulio. Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
Yes, we've received 2 this evening. They're both in-house. First is Mr. Jeff Whitlatch, who is followed by Lador Milter.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jeff Whitlatch. I live at 7090 Duncorney Drive, and I am a resident of Sandy Springs. My comments tonight center around the staff memos requesting approval of contractors for various jobs. There does not seem to be a standard format. Probably the best way to review this issue, and I was looking at agenda items 24027, which is page 23 in the packet, and 24028, which is page 27 in the packet. While not complete, 24027 seems to be the better of the two. 24027 at least says the following: the scope of work, the companies invited to bid, the members of the panel who evaluated the bids, the criteria used to evaluate the bids, the scoring of the top 4 firms based on 100 points, and a recommendation on firm selection based on scoring and interviews. What 24027 does not have is a breakdown by firm of the bids received. A review of 24028 shows the following deficiencies from the prior memo: no listing of the panel who evaluated the bids, no listing of criteria used to judge bids, no itemization of the scoring of the bidders, and there's no basis upon which the award is recommended other than a non-transparent comment about administrative review and reference checks. Further, I'm presuming that the comment in that memo where it says staff recommends awarding contract to the lowest responsible bidder, White Oak Landscaping Company, reflects that Bravo Fence, whose bid was $8,000 or approximately 20 times less than White Oak, was the irresponsible bidder. But we don't know any scoring involved, nor does the memo state that Sandy Springs government will not accept any future bids from Bravo. So either Bravo did not understand the scope of work requested, or they intentionally submitted an out-of-range bid. My perspective is that there should be a standard format for all contract bids that the mayor and city council are being asked to approve. I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, and I hope that my comments will be appropriately considered, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lador Miltier.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor. I think I might be the young lady that you're referring to, but I don't know. My name wasn't called. I would like to come and speak because I was interrupted at the Black History kickoff with the Art Gallery, and I just wanted to finish my comments. I was speaking about Namari Dance Studios. Let me tell you, they're amazing. Those girls put on a show. They're national competition winners, and they're not, pay attention over there to those girls over there dancing performers. No. They're going to Africa next year. Nationals. Sandy Spring girls. A business in Sandy Springs. They cleaned up in last year in Orlando. It was amazing, a proud moment. And the thing about it was, I was also going to say was that the owner, Antoine, went to North Springs High School. Parents took the kids out of school that day, early. They left their job, they went to the school, they brought them back to Sandy Springs at the studio to make sure they had an actual full rehearsal with makeup and everything. You know why? Because the mayor was going to be there. And Mr. Antoine Sessions said, Lador, I don't want you to pick the music. I want to do it because technique is important. I want Mr. Mayor to see the technique. First time being able to do something like this. I was a part of the team. I made all of the arrangements. I, out of my pocket, decided that I want to make sure we have live music, so I paid for it. And while I was cut off, I had a lot of guests come up to me saying, is everything okay? What's going on? What was that? Why? Why now? And I think that's the question, right? Like, why? But we move on. And we drove home very quietly in the car. My husband drove. My kids were in the car. And we drove home quietly. The next day, some friends, they were uncomfortable about that. And they said, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to see. I'm going to let him know that you were involved in this. I'm going to let him know this wasn't right. And he replied to everyone, it's tightly controlled. Only the mayor, acting as MC, and the artist is authorized to speak. This was after. This was the next day. See, I wrote the run-up show. I wrote the press release. I even wrote the second part of Mayor Paul's quote. But this is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about that amazing event. We're talking about you hurt people with your actions, sir. Thank you.
Well, again, I want to apologize to you and to everybody else involved. I don't know if you arrived in time to hear my public apology, but it's sincere. If I mess up, I'm going to confess and try and acknowledge that I didn't live up to my standards. So for that, thank you. Any others? No. All right, we'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion?
Tuesday, February 6, 2024.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Paul.
Ms.
I
Rochelle.
move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, February 6th.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to new business, the clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-025. This is consideration to approve a resolution to adopt the 2024 city priorities presented by City Manager Eden Freeman.
Ms. Freeman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. During the council retreat last Tuesday, we reviewed the progress that staff had made on council's adopted 2023 priorities, and we also proposed initiatives for 2024. Staff is proposing that we maintain the same priorities that we have had for 2023, which are to set the standard for excellence in customer service and citizen engagement, deliver the highest quality public safety services, create and support targeted economic development opportunities with a focus on redevelopment, promote sustainable growth and foster environmental stewardship, provide inclusive and diverse recreational and cultural enrichment, enhance multimodal transportation accessibility and maintain high community appearance standards, and ensure long-term water reliability, rates, and service for all residents and the business community. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
All right, you've heard the report of the city manager. What's the desire of council? Mr. Paulson.
Move approval of agenda item 2024-25, resolution to adopt the 2024 city priorities as stated.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve a resolution adopting the 2024 priorities. Any discussion? Mr. Baumann.
So, Eden, thank you, and thank you for the retreat, to all the staff that provided all the thorough information. These are very important priorities. That they remain constant. The devil is in the details and the work plan that you all have to put together. And we spoke maybe yesterday. I just want to give you a chance to follow up with what we talked about, that throughout the day, the council members had questions, many of which are answered in the moment. We had the open dialogue with the suggestions or considerations at the end, and I called to ask you, sir, how do you all follow up with that? And maybe you can share a little bit about that conversation.
Certainly. We take extensive notes during that day, and we've already started the follow-up process. Much of what you'll hear back from us on the questions that are longer term, you'll hear during the budget process. The reason why it's important for council to adopt the priorities now is that our budget season will kick off tomorrow. Our CFO will transmit a memo to our senior leadership team outlining the dates for the budget process, the preparation that will go into it, and that staff is expected to develop their work plans, finalize those work plans to come before council based on the feedback that you gave us at the retreat. So if there were more immediate things, as you mentioned, that we could respond to there during the meeting, we did, but we'll be following up with you for those other items over the coming weeks, and especially in the budget process.
Ms. Rochelle.
So one of the priorities is the focus on redevelopment, and we just talked about our aging apartment complexes, and I hope that that's something that we can look at this year, like hopefully working with some developers or some of the owners of the complexes.
Certainly. We're always open to discussions with developers.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-025, a resolution adopting the 2024 city priorities. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2024-026. This is consideration to approve a contract award to Holt Consulting Company, LLC, for design services on Glen Ridge Drive multi-use side path project, and to authorize city manager to execute the contract. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and council, good evening. Tonight, we recommend award to Holt Consulting Company for design services related to the Glen Ridge Drive multi-use side path project in the amount of $487,246. A little bit of background to the project. S2122 is the project number for the project. Consists of a 12-foot bicycle pedestrian side path on the east side of Glen Ridge Drive, extending from Hammond Drive to just south of Wellington Trace, with the intention to tie into an existing side path already constructed in that location.
Project components would include the side path, ADA-compliant curb ramps, curb and gutter, and standard city streetscape elements, among other elements. The project will improve bicycle and pedestrian facilities and traffic operations on Glen Ridge Drive between Hammond and Wellington Trace. To advance this project, the city issued a request for proposals on September 27, 2023, to select a qualified design consultant to provide design services for the project. A pre-proposal meeting was held on October 4, 2023. The design services separated into 5 tasks as follows: survey and concept design services, design development, utility coordination, and right-of-way acquisition, final design services, public involvement, and post-design services. In response to the RFP, the following consultants submitted responses: Atlas Technical Consultants, Holt Consulting Company, and NV5 Engineers Consultants. Proposals were evaluated by a staff committee: Mr. Wesley Waters, B.B. Lee, Connor Mock, Maggie Grant, and Joan Estenval. Technical criteria scored to evaluate the proposals included project manager and key team leaders, prime consultant experience, resources, technical approach and schedule, and the fee proposal or cost associated with the proposal. The evaluation committee reached the following consensus results based on a review of the submittals and the proposals and the scoring criteria, with Holt Consulting receiving a consensus score of 88.45, ranked number 1, NV5 shortly thereafter at 86, ranked 2, and Atlas Technical Consultants at 78.68. Upon review of the responses of the evaluation committee, staff recommends that the city award to Holt in the amount of $487,246. The funds available for this project are sufficient within the budget for design for this particular project. And as you may recollect, with this particular project, we have a standing agreement already, or a completed agreement already with Perimeter CID for a 50-50 share on this. And that agreement as well cites that available budget for the project. So with that, staff recommends award to Holt Consulting.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio. Have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-026, a contract award to Holt Consulting for design services on Glen Ridge Drive multi-use side path project, and authorizing city manager to execute the contract. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson.
Mayor Paul, just a quick question to the project just south of this, because that's still, that whole northbound on the Glen Ridge ramp down the 285. When is that supposed to be finished, and will that coincide with this project being finished, hopefully?
So if you're referring to Transform 285-400, correct, sir? That, theoretically, we see the last of the, what I'd call significant hardscape work, probably completed mid to late summer is the best estimate.
This year?
This year, yes, sir. Let me qualify that too, this year. So we see that mid to late this summer. This project then picks up probably about a year of design or so. There's some significant right-of-way acquisition that will have to take place in order to achieve a side path on that side of the road from where the side path ends now up to Hammond Drive. So a little bit of work there. We would see in about a year we're at work acquiring right-of-way and then move on to construction from there. So,
any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-026, approving a contract award to Holt Consulting for design services on Glen Ridge Drive multi-use side path. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-027. This is consideration to approve contract award to Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates, Inc. for the development of the North Springs MARTA Station Transit-Oriented Development Design Plan and Peachtree Dunwoody Road Corridor Study, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, before I go into the elements behind the consultant selection in this point, I'd like to ask Kristen Westcott to come up and just briefly discuss the intent and purpose of the corridor study and TOD study, and then I'll talk about the actual consultant selection. Kristen, if you could, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a quick recap. Like many of our studies, this is building upon previous efforts. The city had applied for an LCI supplemental study to kind of build on the perimeter LCI that had been completed a number of years ago. And we're very excited about this opportunity to really hone in on this corridor between some major investments, both from the city's standpoint in terms of the roadway network, but also our regional transit. To have the North Springs MARTA station and the Sandy Springs MARTA station sort of flanking this, as well as the opportunity to look at how the path, for example, that Marty will be, proceeding with design, connecting a system all through perimeter. So a similar pathway on Peachtree Downey Road currently goes up to about Mount Vernon, and this particular study will also be looking at that opportunity for how we get from that Sandy Springs MARTA station and Perimeter Center West to Abernathy all the way up to Spalding, where we also have a plan to have a path crossover, Spalding when that bridge is replaced. So just like other planning studies, we always start with what are we starting with by looking at all of the existing conditions, demographics, land use, and all of those elements, as well as working with the citizens and everybody that lives there and works there and rides transit. What are our opportunities to really improve this corridor? It is deficient in multiple ways in terms of walking and biking and last mile connectivity. We've talked about that terminology a lot to the stations. And so this gives us an opportunity to really look at where those investments need to be made. And look forward to, it has a very short time frame. We're going to be wrapping up this study by early fall. So we'll be back to you a number of times to talk to you about it. So thanks.
Right. I just thought it important to remind you, or in this first case, we were awarding design services with a deliberate purpose of construction documents and move to construction. In this case, a planning study, as Kristen explained, and the elements therein associated with it. Tonight, staff recommends award to Nelson Nygaard in the amount of some $249,992 to develop this North Springs MARTA Station Transit-Oriented Development Plan and Peachtree Dunwoody Corridor Study. As Kristen mentioned, the ARC awarded us a grant, some $200,000 with the city's obligated match of $50,000 to fund this project. The city issued a request for proposal on November 15, 2023, and closed the RFP on December 27, 2023. The city also hosted a non-mandatory pre-proposal meeting on November 27, 2023. 6 proposals were received at that time. HKS, Kimley Horn and Associates, Nelson Nygaard, Pond and Company, Sizemore Group, and Star White House Landscape Architects and Planners. The City Evaluation Committee consisted of, as Kristen Westcott has cited, Caitlin Schenkel, Michelle McIntosh Ross, Caroline Kenchler, and Candace Finethy. Proposals were scored using the following evaluation criteria: project understanding and approach, project team, project references, and cost. After evaluating all received proposals, 4 firms with the highest scores were interviewed. The evaluation committee considered the proposals and interviews and scored the firms as follows out of a possible 100 points. Nelson Nygaard receiving 88.2 points, Sizemore at 85.4, Kimley Horn 82.2, and Star White House at 79.0. The evaluation committee determined that Nelson Nygaard submitted the most responsive and responsible proposal to accomplish the project, and recommends Nelson Nygaard to perform the North Springs MARTA Station TOD and Peachtree Dunwoody Corridor Study at a cost of $249,992.
You've heard the report of the the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-027, approve a contract award to Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates for the development of the North Springs MARTA Station Transit-Oriented Development Plan.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-027, a contract award to Nelson Nygaard Consulting for the development of the North Springs Morris Station Transit-Oriented Development Plan and the Peachtree Dunwoody Road Corridor Study. Any discussion? Ms. Rochelle.
I'm very excited about this because in my district, this is probably the most well-traveled road, one of them. I do have a question about, it says 400 state road, it says 400 trail. Is that the same as a 400 path 400?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to connect to the path 400.
So ultimately, this helps us with the plan to continue this path 400 up through perimeter and beyond.
Okay. Is part of it going to be called trail and part of it going to be called path? Or
Kristen helped me with terminology there. I think that we kind of use the terms interchangeably.
Okay.
But, all right. So
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-027. Motion to approve the contract award to Nelson Nygaard Consulting for the development of the North Springs Morris Station Transit-Oriented Development Plan and Peachtree Dunwoody Road Corridor Study. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-28. This is consideration to approve contract award to White Oak Landscaping Company, Inc. for the Hammond Park basketball wall renovation project and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Presented by Director of Public Recreation and Parks, Brent Walker.
Mr. Walker.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me report for the first time to this body. I am here tonight to get a contract approved for White Oak Landscaping Company in the amount of $159,331.77 for the replacement of the timber wall located at the western and northern edge of the basketball courts at Hammond Park. The wall has outlived its useful life and needs replacement. Currently, water sheet flows down behind the wall and leaches onto the court, bringing mud and sediment. A solicitation was posted on December 6th to replace the timber wall with a modular block wall and install inlets above the wall to collect rainwater and direct it away from the courts. Along with these improvements, the contractor will also replace the fencing and relocate the existing stairway to the east of its current location. A bid was put out on December 6th, that day before, and then a pre-bid was held on December 14th, and bids coming in on the 10th of January. 6 companies submitted bids. Those are in your memo, with White Oak being the lowest responsive bid. To comment on the gentleman's comment earlier, the Bravo Fence Company that submitted the low bid of $8,085, they were non-responsive because they only bid on the fence portion of the posting. So the most responsive bid obviously was White Oak with their fund, and with that, they've done several jobs with the city at Windsor Meadows and done a lot of landscaping work for the city and has shown themselves to be a reliable contractor. So staff recommends awarding the contract to them for the submitted amount.
All right, you've heard the report of the Director of Recreation and Parks. What's the desire of council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the council consideration to approve the contract award to White Oak Landscaping Company for the Hammond Park basketball wall renovation project and to authorize the city manager to execute.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-028, a contract award to White Oak Landscaping Company for the Hammond Park basketball wall renovation project and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract. Any discussion? Mr. DiGiulio.
Could you go back to the slide that has all the prices, all the bids on it, please? There you go.
There we go.
8,000 to almost 400,000. Obviously, the 8,000 people had no idea what they were doing. Did they not attend the briefing, or?
So it's a non-mandatory pre-bid. It was a non-mandatory pre-bid.
Right.
There was a set of plans developed by Foresight Group for this project, so it was an apples-to-apples bid. They all received the construction documents to do their pricing with.
But even the forgetting about them, the other bids 159 up to almost 400,000. It just seems like were all these comparable quality, all these comparable project? I mean, it just seems like it's more than 100% difference.
Yes, sir. Typically, when I see bids like that, I hone in the middle of where people land. And if those are comparable or close to each other, within $100,000 of each other, then those are the ones that are more practical and probably the better bidders on the project. There are obviously always outliers that overbid, put too much profit margin into the project, or mark up the materials for the project too high to make more money off of the supply. But again, this was an apples to apples bid. They were all given the same set of documents.
All set
to
of
bid on.
plans and documents?
Yes.
Man, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Rochelle.
So when we were out there the other day, we were talking about the pickleball courts, and they wanted a gate, I guess. I mean, I just thought if they were out there that maybe you could discuss them also doing the gate for the pickleball court.
We have a separate scope of work for that project.
Oh, you do?
That
Okay.
we are getting bids and quotes on. Right
I didn't know
now.
if it was that big, but okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a point of clarification. Have you gone back to White Oak Landscaping and say, listen, are you sure you bid this right? You sure you want this? We're going to award this to you. You need to do this. Have you gone back and talked to them? And have they said, yes, we understand. We know what we're doing. We know what we're getting into?
Yes, and fortunately, as I stated before, White Oak has done multiple jobs for the city and shown themselves to be a qualified vendor, on time, good work, price is good, so we feel very confident in their ability.
Well, that's good. I like going back to a contractor.
Sure.
Because some contractors will look at this and go, I must have missed something, and they will withdraw their bid. But if you've talked to them and they're good for it, then let's go. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, they missed about $60,000. Yeah. Mr. Bauman.
Reminds me of there was a movie, War Dogs, where they way underbid, and they were furious after they underbid. I mean, I get the sense, maybe you know or somebody else knows, that their contractors, if they're busy, they're fishing, and if they could just catch their cost and time in the bid, but if they can catch a situation where just for whatever reason other people don't bid and they give an inflated bid and they get accepted, they make a very profitable, it's a numbers game. But I agree, but I part of me says have Bravo Fence agree to do it for $8,500, but I don't want to put them out of business. But yeah, I would, if
they would start, nothing would get done.
That's right. That's right.
They couldn't afford the materials at that.
We've seen this. We've certainly seen this along the way, and I think the right question was what Councilman Paulson asked, to make sure that they make all the qualitative things. But I suspect in this day and age, people are fishing for getting lucky on an inflated contract. They'll do the work. If they can't make an inflated contract, they'll see if the city of XYZ will have a bid where nobody responds, and they get their inflated contract there.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-028, approving a contract award to White Oak Landscaping Company for the Hammond Park basketball wall renovation project and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Thank you, Mayor.
Agenda item number 2024-29. This is consideration of an ordinance to amend the City of Sandy Springs FY24 budget to amend the Fleet Project FL233 cost budget, presented by Fire Chief Keith Sanders.
Chief Sanders.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you here is a request to amend the budget, the 2024 budget, specifically the Fleet Project 233 cost budget. Staff recommends that the council authorize the transfer of $260,000 to fund partially the purchase of a transport-capable medical response unit that you'll hear more about in the next agenda item, with the remainder drawn from this existing project number of Fleet 233 funding. This purchase would be recorded in the Fleet Fund under Project FL 233 and would be partially funded by the $260,000 of public safety impact fees, which are allowed to be used for this type purchase that are being held by the city, and then with the approximately of $140,000 remainder covered by the existing project FL 233. Although there's available funds in there of $500,000 currently, that fund is for replacement of our large fleet, our large fire apparatus, and the city will, CFO and the city manager will look to refund that difference in the upcoming FY 2025 budget. I'm available to answer any questions you may have on this budget amendment.
You've heard the report of the fire chief. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul?
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-029, consideration of an ordinance to amend the City of Sandy Springs fiscal year 2024 budget to amend the fleet project FL 233 cost budget.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Rochelle. Motion by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-029, amending the City of Sandy Springs FY24 budget to amend the fleet project FL 233 cost budget. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson.
Chief, thank you. Hang on a second. There we go. Thank you for this. So just to be clear, you had $500,000 in FL 233 that you're sliding some of that for this equipment. Why aren't you going to need that for the planned fire equipment purchase you were going to make anyway with that money?
Well, we will need the fleet fund that we have there is to replace our current apparatus. And this upcoming budget year, we will have a piece of apparatus that we will have to order. In order, we fully funded up front to get the discount points percentage at that time. It's taking 3.5 to 4 years to get that fleet here once it's built. So we've got time there with that current budget to purchase this mobile rescue unit.
And not hurt the next purchase.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-029, an ordinance to amend the City of Sandy Springs FY24 budget to amend the fleet project FL 233 cost budget. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-30. This is consideration to approve a resolution to purchase a medical response unit and authorize the city manager to execute documents to effectuate the same. Also presented by Fire Chief Keith Sanders.
Chief Sanders.
Yes, Mayor and Council, before you here tonight is a request to purchase a medical response unit that has transport capabilities. We are, with the changes that are upcoming with the AMR contract, and City Manager and I have been in negotiation with AMR over the last year. We are also in communication with the North Fulton cities to look at doing a very dynamic regional approach to ambulance response. In doing that, we're going to have to pay a subsidy. Currently, we pay a $260,000 a year subsidy without any escalator. That was a 5-year contract that sunsets this upcoming June. And over the last year, we have been working with AMR. They came before us and they let us know that, as I shared with you in the January 16th work session, that they've come back to us with an 850% increase for subsidy to provide the same level of service response times of that 7 minutes and 59 seconds, which is, we can't do that. And looking at our data, looking at our response times currently, we put a fire truck on all EMS calls that are critical emergency EMS calls with a paramedic within that 8 minutes 90% of the time. We have all of the intervention, all of the drugs that we need to stabilize that patient, medications, equipment on our apparatus. What our data has shown us is that getting that patient to the hospital in an emergency setting, that ambulance only responds 93% of the time. It never responds emergency. It responds non-emergency from that because the patient is stabilized by our medics when they get on the scene and putting into place their intervention. What we do see is that we need an ambulance on the scene within 12 minutes, not 8, because we are stabilizing that patient with the equipment and with the personnel that are on the fire apparatus. By looking at doing a regional 12-minute response time to the emergency calls, it really is allowing us to come to a more manageable subsidy. Sandy Springs, we have the most calls out of all 5 cities, so we would have to take the brunt of the largest subsidy payment to AMR. And by doing it regionally, by increasing that time, we are able to have a more manageable fee structure that will be presented to you in this upcoming FY 2025 budget. That specific number has not been ironed out yet, but it's nowhere near the $3.6 million. It's way less than $1 million, and you'll see more of that as the city managers continue that negotiation with AMR. What we don't have in place today in Sandy Springs is a transport type unit that if our medics get on the scene and we do have a critical patient and we know that the ambulance is not going to arrive within 12 minutes, we have no capabilities of loading and go to the nearest hospital with that patient. With your approval here with this medical rescue unit, it will have transport capabilities. We will staff it, if approved through the budget. We will staff that with the adequate personnel in order to respond to medical calls. The other benefit is when we put this in service, we will place it in service at Fire Station 2, which has the most calls. That apparatus will run in the place of an engine. A fire engine today runs about $1 million. A ladder truck runs about $2 million. And our goal here is to reduce the mileage on our fleet. This apparatus is $390,000 to purchase it, but it will meet our needs, and it would also give us that capability to transport. So, I ask for your consideration with this. We are purchasing this. If approved, it will be purchased through the buy-board cooperative contract. We're piggybacking off of a contract. Cobb County bought 6 of these units. I spoke with their chief last week. Over the last 3 months, they have transported 12 patients in Cobb County because they're facing the same challenges with their ambulance service as we are. And as I failed to share with you a while ago, I did in this January 16th meeting, was that there's a national crisis with the ambulances. The reimbursement rates from the insurance agency, insurance companies have reduced down below 30%. So you take in consideration, a rate that AMR charges in Sandy Springs of $1,725. They're getting a reimbursement from the insurance company less than $400. That's unsustainable. Plus, they have the same challenges with recruitment as we have had, as the police department has had. And so we really had to think outside the box of how we address this. And I feel confident that this piece of apparatus will help us when we do have that one patient that we've got to load and go because the ambulance is delayed in getting on the scene. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
All right, you've heard the report of the fire chief. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio. Have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-030, a resolution to purchase a medical response unit and authorize the city manager to execute the same. Any discussion?
I have a question.
All right, Dr. Kelly and then Mr. DiGiulio is the maker of the motion, has the floor.
Chief, as you know, my family has made use of these several times in the past couple of years, and we do appreciate the promptness and the help of the fire department, and fortunately, the response of all of it has really worked out. By having a smaller unit on here than a ladder truck or a pumper truck, whatever the other trucks are called, will this enable the department to get through our biggest challenge in Sandy Springs? Seems to be traffic all the time. Will this allow the department to get through this traffic a little easier and maybe even speed up response times because it's a smaller unit rather than taking one of those massive fire trucks on some of these roads which are really not designed to handle equipment that large?
It's a piece of equipment that is able to maneuver a lot easier in the congestion that we have in Sandy Springs. If you recall back a few years ago, you folks approved our preemption that's now at every traffic signal, and it's GPS driven. That absolutely changed our challenges in a positive way, because when that apparatus gets within, or an ambulance gets within 2,500 feet of that intersection, that light turns green. The saying that we use is green to the scene, because our apparatus, if it's working properly, never sees a traffic light red. And within that 2,500 feet, it gives enough time for the traffic to move out of the way. We also are able to watch that upstairs in headquarters on a display of that unit actually traveling there. And so our times, I believe, are the best they've ever been. I don't see how they could improve any more because of where our stations are located. But, I do believe that this piece of equipment will get there safer because it's much smaller than a ladder truck or a fire engine. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chief. A couple of questions. How long will it take? Will we have pretty long wait on this?
12 to 14 months.
Okay.
We hope to, if approved tonight, we hope that we will have the PO to the company in March.
Okay. Will it require a new hire as well to manage?
So if you recall back on January the 16th, I shared with you two options in consideration when we get to that point. I don't see us having need for the personnel in the fiscal year 2025 because the truck won't be here. But when we do look at it, there's a couple of options. We are waiting on our ISO report that should be coming at any day, and that will help us also in the determination. As I shared with you, we have a consideration to maybe decommission one of our ladder trucks and use that personnel on this vehicle, or request additional personnel. But we're going to try our best, and I truly mean this. I get motivated through the data. What does our data show us? And what I love about working for Sandy Springs is we are a new city. And I can go back to 2005 and I can pull the data, and it really tells a story about what our needs are. And if you recall, I shared with you, we have a lot of high risk, but we have a lot of low frequency when it comes to fire. And our EMS is a very high risk cause, but in their high frequency, but we do one heck of a job in helping those individuals when they're in their situation, because today we have all of our fleet. We have more paramedics, more fleet that have the intervention on those trucks, and we're getting there and making a difference in them. So, you will hear more about that, but I don't see us having a need for that personnel until that truck arrives.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Rochelle.
So one of the issues with the ambulance is that when they drop someone off, they have to stay, and sometimes the ER is backed up, and they have to sometimes wait for hours. So it takes them out of commission. Will they have the same requirements?
What has occurred since my last conversation with you is AMR has worked with the North Fulton Hospital, especially North Fulton Hospital, and they are actually having a personnel there to help triage those patients the moment they walk in the door with the patient, to reduce that, what we now call wall time. So we have seen some improvements on that since our last conversation with you folks.
Great.
Any others? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-030, approving a resolution to purchase a medical response unit and authorizing city manager to execute the documents. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-31. This is consideration to approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article 2, Division 1, Section 22 through 25, collection of fees of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances, presented by Fire Chief Keith Sanders.
Chief Sanders.
Mayor and Council, before you here is a request. I did share this with you back on the January 16th work session on a request to consider approval of an ordinance to amend the Chapter 22, Article 2, Division 1 of a collection of fees of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances. And what I shared with you during that work session was the challenge that we are facing with responding to non-emergency lift assist in assisted living facilities where the resident has fallen and needs assistance getting back up in their chair or their bed. And we run a number of these calls every year. It requires a fire truck to get on the scene. All of our apparatus are staffed with a minimum of 3. That's required to have a minimum of 3 on each truck. Those individuals, when they get on the scene there, they go out of service, sometimes up towards 30 minutes to an hour, depends on how large the patient is or depends on what the situation is when they walk in. But the moment that truck begins to go non-emergency to that location to assist that resident, that truck is out of service and it cannot respond to structure fires, to heart attacks, to traumatic calls, because we're constantly going there. The challenge that we have discovered over the years is that a lot of these companies, these management companies, even though they have the personnel and staff in the facility, they consider it a liability for their employees to pick up those residents and put them back in their chair, and so they've just relied on the fire department to do it for them. And this is not just a Sandy Springs challenge, it's all across the country. You can do some searches on the internet and you can find that there's a number of fire departments that have seen this as a problem and realize that we've got to do something about it, and charging a fee, I believe, is a good way to begin hopefully seeing a reduction of this. Cobb County is the closest department that I know of that passed such of an ordinance. They really haven't seen a reduction in their responses. They've gotten a response, though, from the property management. We would still rather pay you do it because it reduces our liability and it's a lot cheaper for us. And that's the response that I got from their fire chief. So we feel like that we are presenting to you a fee structure that is higher than what Cobb's is, but what we did, we looked at theirs, but we also looked at our budget and what our overall budget cost us, and we realized that we need to really charge for what it's really costing us operationally, as well as for the personnel, as well as for the apparatus time and that equipment that's going to that scene. We also believe, we had a very good suggestion from Councilwoman Rochelle that we ought to consider having a minimum of a half hour when we do get on that scene that we charge them for. This is the fee structure. If we have 3 to 4 calls within a 30-day period, then that fee charge increases, and 5 or more calls within 30 days, it goes to the $4.50 per half hour. And we do have one complex that we do respond more than 5 times a month to that location. The second fee that we were requesting is the fire watch, and I did attempt to answer all the questions you folks had from the last council work session, and they are in the documents that you have before you there. But the fire watch is, if you recall last year when we had the freezing temperatures, every time we have freezing temperatures, we have ruptured water lines all throughout our commercial facilities, especially our apartments that have sprinklers. And it really becomes a challenge. Last year, it was unprecedented. Matter of fact, I learned from one of our restoration companies that Fulton County was the most affected county in the United States with ruptured water lines last year during that big freeze. And so we had hundreds and hundreds of them. What we discovered, or what our code requires, is that the moment that sprinkler system goes out of service, a fire watch has to be implemented, and someone has to be with that building 24 hours a day until the water system is restored and the fire protection is reinstated. What we have discovered is they were forging the logs, that they really wasn't doing the fire watch. So moving forward, we're well aware that we have that out there, but we have such a high risk with not having the sprinkler systems that we may have to staff it with fire personnel, and if we do, then we need to be able to recover those fees. So that's why we have the fire watch. The fire apparatus standby, and I did give you a list, a chart showing you the number of calls that we were out on either 285 or 400 where our apparatus was on the scene greater than 45 minutes. Usually our folks can mitigate an incident within that 45-minute window. If it's a traffic accident with injuries, we triage them, treat them, load them, and they're gone. But what we have to do is we maintain our fire apparatus out on 285 or 400 to block the lanes to protect the workers. We've had some near misses. We've had apparatus hit because of drivers not paying attention. So we have to protect that scene. Gas line ruptures, natural gas line ruptures. Our apparatus sometimes spends 3 to 4 hours. We've had one in the last 6 months. We spent almost 12 hours on the scene while Atlanta Gas was trying to cut the gas off to that ruptured main. When we do that, Atlanta Gas charges the contractor's insurance, and we have opportunity to back charge for our services as well through that insurance company when a line is ruptured. Also, when you have large tractor and trailers, when they have you remember the chickens when they was all over 285? Our truck was out there for hours as well. Police was out there. We were out there.
Is it true some of your guys were trying to barbecue those things?
I wouldn't doubt it, Mayor. But so when you look at those type of incidences, we need a mechanism in place to help recover some of the cost, because it's wearing our apparatus out sitting out there, and it's damaging our apparatus when they get hit. So that's the other reason why I've put that in there. And then there's other service fees that are out there that are available that we could also recover from. And I'll be glad to answer any more questions that you may have.
All right, you've heard the report of the fire chief. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2024-31, approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article 2, Division 1, Section 22-25, the collection of fees for the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances.
Motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. Baumann, that we approve agenda item 2024-031. All right. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is great. We should charge what it's costing us to put people out there. And it sounds like you've already talked to all these locations, and they say, yeah, we're fine with you charging it because it takes responsibility off of them, and they don't have to staff the correct personnel. So I'm totally in favor of doing this. I don't really know how you accomplish this without doing what we're doing. We have to respond to these situations. So if we have to respond to them, then I think we should charge, and so be it.
Mr. Baumann, then Mr. DiGiulio, then Ms. Rochelle.
Chief, thank you. Do we have a sense, did anybody analyze even roughly what, say in calendar year 23, this would have yielded in fees or revenue?
I haven't, but we do have the data that we could look at that.
And you'll track and report. You'll get back to us.
Actually, it is in the memo.
Oh, it was in the memo? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's page 2 at the bottom. So we would estimate in 23 we had 70, so that would be $15,000 for the lift assist portion.
Okay.
If you recall back when you passed the alarm ordinance,
Right.
at that time we implemented what was called Code 70. If we get on the scene, you'll hear it every day. And so we, we already recover some funds back for that when we go out to a false fire alarm, and they didn't call and cancel before we got on the scene. Then we charge them for that. And there will be specific codes for these as well that the on-scene supervisor of the fire apparatus will make the determination and give that code back to the 911 center. That's how we will track it moving forward.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Chief, I think if I understood you correctly, you say that the reason that these assisted livings are calling your people in to lift somebody up is because their people are not trained to lift people up, and they're afraid of the liability of somebody not being trained to do that. We have gone ahead now and we're implementing fire safety with apartment complexes in order for them to get their licenses. Can we do something like that with the assisted livings where we require them that they have on staff somebody who are people who are trained in the proper lifting techniques so that they don't have this problem with litigation on here, and that your people don't have to go out and respond to these?
Councilman, if I could help the chief out
Please.
here. This is a legal point that the state preempts the regulation of these homes, and they're the ones that require what personnel, what licenses must be held by the personnel that are there. And we cannot. And what we believe is happening, what I believe is happening, is that in many instances, while the facility has the license, it may not have the personnel with the correct license to handle the fall or the down patient, and they are asking the city, the taxpayers of Sandy Springs, to bring their duly licensed personnel in to make up that shortfall while they are being paid a fee. But we cannot intercede in the licensing of the facility.
Ms. Rochelle.
So I have two questions, but I want to address what Mr. DiGiulio said. I called my aunt because she lives in Brookdale in Florida, and I asked her, because she falls a lot, and asked her who comes to pick her up, and she said they have someone on staff. There's an RA on staff, and I noticed Brookdale doesn't have any. We haven't been called to their facility, so they can hire someone to take care of these people. So
That's right. We do have a couple of our facilities that they instruct their employees to help and assist.
And they
We
all
did
should
learn
have
that.
one.
Yeah.
So two questions. One, will the fees go into the fire department capital fund, or
They'll go into the general budget, general
into
fund.
General fund. Okay. And as far as the fire watch, will we bill the owners of the complex, or will we bill the HOAs?
Same way we do the citations, we'll build the property management.
Property management. Okay. Thank you.
And to be very clear, if these are residents that are in personal care homes, Mount Vernon Tires, we're not charging them when they call and ask us to assist them. Totally different circumstances.
Anybody else? Dr. Kelly.
So for the fire apparatus standby, I guess it just depends on the situation, who gets billed for that or what.
That's correct.
Yeah. Can you speak to enforcement of these fees?
So what we're going to look at is there is some third-party vendors that specialize in collecting these type fees. They work with our records management system to do that. We're going to look at that, and it'd probably be something that will come back before you of how we do that. Currently with our citations that the fire marshal office writes, we manage that in-house. It's quite taxing to do that, but we do and take it through our court. But with this type fee structure, there's third-party vendors out there that can assist us and be beneficial to the program. and minimize the impact of our services, of the accounting of it.
Okay. Last question for me. I received a little bit of commentary that there was some concern around this being, sort of a slippery slope or something like, well, can you just speak to why these services and how far can it go, or are we limiting ourselves to these services, charging for them?
Yes.
Councilperson, if you'll note, each aspect of this ordinance calls for a fee where the city, and specifically the fire department, has been asked to inject itself into a place where entities are making money. It is not unlike our false alarm ordinance. Individuals, homeowners, business owners who make a call, need the facilities that their tax money pays for, this is not associated with them. These fees that are before you tonight that the chief is recommending that you adopt have to do with for-profit entities that are in the business of doing things that they have to cause our fire department to inject themselves in. And it's the same situation. Why would we not be reimbursed? Why would the taxpayers in Sandy Springs not be reimbursed to be made partners in the money-making proposition that they've been asked to participate in? Whether it's the extended care living, whether it's the transport tractor trailer on the interstate that wrecks, those are the situations that each one of these fees are proposed for.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
I'm glad you emphasized that the taxpayers are paying for these services. And taxpayers that need these services, they're already paying for them through their taxes and other things, that insurance reimbursements, even though they're inadequate. These are situations that are extraordinary. When we have to go do something, the care home is being paid to care for these people, and part of their care is to make sure if they fall that they are restored to their bed or wherever they're supposed to be. They're not doing that. They're asking Chief Sanders' team to come out and do that. That's above and beyond the normal responses that the taxpayers pay for. When we have wrecks out on 285, whether it's a hazardous material or we're just sitting there waiting to protect, there's nobody out on 285 that's normally involved in that, particularly on the trucks. They're not paying any taxes for these services. So to reimburse our taxpayers for these extraordinary services, to me, is fair and appropriate. I understand the concerns about the slippery slope, but I don't see this as a slippery slope. I see this as just compensation for services provided above and beyond the normal level of service that's provided. Any others? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-031, approving an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article 2, Division 1, Section 22 through 25, collection of the fees of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Clerk, please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-32, consideration to approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 6, Article 2, Division 2, Section 6 through 61C of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances for an effective date and other purposes, presented by City Attorney Dan Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Mayor Council, this is a proposal to amend the current ordinances of the City of Sandy Springs. An ordinance has been in place since September of 2007. In many locations, Sandy Springs following suit, it is required of servers of alcohol that you attend a class and obtain a certificate so that you understand some of the problems that the service of the alcohol can pose, such as over-serving and the like. I would point out that in many places the private sector insurance for establishments that serve alcohol make the same requirement. Evidently, back in September 2007, it was rare for a server, an employee of one restaurant, to go and work at another restaurant. Evidently, since COVID, that is very common for restaurants to share servers. Our current ordinance requires that each server have a certificate at each establishment. This amendment before you tonight would allow a server, an employee, to transport, if you will, his or her certificate from one location to another. We believe that it fulfills the obligation that the employee is trained so that the public is better protected against overservice of alcohol and the other problems that can come from the service of alcohol, but at the same time is a little more user-friendly for our restaurants and for the employees too. We would recommend the passage of it to allow these employees to transport that certificate.
You've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council? Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-032, an ordinance to amend Chapter 6, Article 2, Division 2, Section 6-61C of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances.
Have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-032, an ordinance to amend Chapter 6, Article 2, Division 2, Section 6-61C of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Ms. Rochelle first.
Just a quick question. If someone, you're talking about within Sandy Springs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Dr. Kelly?
Mr. Lee, how did this come to our attention? Was it more proactive, or are we reacting to something?
I have a very reactive position here. I react to you all. At least two council members, Councilperson Rochelle and Councilman Bauman, have brought this up a couple of times.
Yeah.
And we've heard it from, I think staff has heard it from other vendors, other restaurateurs, and even I've heard it from an employee.
Yeah, I sure wouldn't mind finding other, because this seems like kind of common sense. I really like this amendment. I just wonder if there are any other, I guess we'll find out if there are any other.
Well, I made a mistake of going to one of our local establishments on the very day that one of their servers had to go get 3 or 4 different licenses, and they were not happy. And I was concerned about the quality of my food. They were unhappy enough. And then the owner came over and we discussed it a little bit. So particularly in today's world where you have a lot of people working part-time in different establishments, to require them to go through to certify that they've been trained multiple times with the same training just doesn't seem fair. So
I'd love if there was a way we could, maybe proactively try to mitigate some of these barriers as they come up.
It's been my experience.
We don't know of any other barriers.
It's been my experience that when this happens, we do get notified.
Mayor Paul?
Mr. Bauman.
I'm going to pile on with what Dr. Kelly just said. If there are any opportunities in our regulatory scheme, in a fair way, right? I mean, the city has a constitutional responsibility, a state law responsibility in licensing and oversight and regulation, but it's never really a bad idea, and maybe this is a really good time, if there was a sense that a review of our regulatory scheme as it relates to particularly small local businesses and local employees, whether there would be a mechanism or something for us to do a review, perhaps in cooperation with the chamber, maybe with a citizen business roundtable. I would like to explore every opportunity where we could reduce the regulatory burden in a way that still meets the public policy demands that we have and our legal demands to free our businesses and establishments to do the in a really difficult environment at times anyway, where we can be less of an impediment. And the other side of that is what we just did with the fire department, where excessive users of our services, where we can layer on charges. I think that's perfectly appropriate too. This is the antithesis, so I echo Dr. Kelly, and I appreciate this proposal tonight, and I know that Jody and all the others up here, we've talked about this, and I can't think of any specific ones, but I'd love to use this opportunity if there's a methodical or purposeful way we could review our regulatory scheme and our fees to see where maybe some relief could be had, and maybe where, again, the city is actually in the position of excessively doing things that we either shouldn't be doing or we're not being fairly compensated.
Just an observation, I would tell you that the citizenry, especially the restaurateurs in Sandy Springs, are very astute, and they do not hold back, and they're very suggestive and good at what they do. Most of them are, and I think the city has been very responsive, and during the time, as has the council, in listening to those concerns. Since COVID and the crises that surrounded that in the retail world, especially in the restaurant world, we've made 4 or 5 different changes that I know of dealing with, as has the state. And many times we are driven by what the state law requires. We now allow package sales from restaurants where we did not before, because the state didn't allow it, but now they do. But I think you can rest assured that we'll hear about it.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-032, approving an ordinance to amend Chapter 6, Article 2, Division 2, Section 6 through 61C of the Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. All right, moving to reports. A few things I've got. The legislature's in session. They're beginning to move a lot of legislation. There's several things that you may want to keep an eye on. First of all, the House Appropriations Committee passed the mid-year budget adjustment this year. There are a couple of things that are of interest. One, the House will vote on it tomorrow. It includes $2 million for the construction of for an Anne Frank exhibit. So that will be very helpful to that process. We've been working for several years to get state funding, and at least the House has recognized it. And I think that it's happening because it was in the governor's budget, so the governor recognizes it too. So they'll be very helpful to that project. Another thing that was interesting today, the House Appropriations Committee put in $200 million. It was in the governor's budget for LMIG, the local paving program, which we use mostly for resurfacing our local roads and streets. It's always had a matching component. The House today removed the matching component from the bill that it passed, so that will save us a good bit of money when it comes to resurfacing streets. So there's also one of the things that's frustrating us every year is during budget time, when any increase in our revenue has to be advertised as a tax increase, even though we haven't changed the millage rate at all. There's Senate Bill 349 will be heard in the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow. That will remove that as long as the millage rate stays the same. So that will eliminate a lot of confusion. It eliminates the 3%, the 3-year lock on successful appeals. Now, if you appeal your property tax, you can't. Your property tax cannot be adjusted for 3 years, and so it will remove that. Even though there's an successful appeal, and this doesn't affect us that much because we already have this. A 3% cap on the increase of tax collections on homesteaded property will be the most that we can go up on homesteaded property. There'll be a floating homestead that will make sure that at the state level to make sure that homeowners don't have to pay more than a 3% increase in homesteaded property. Does not apply to rental or commercial property. The hearing's going to be tomorrow. That's the Senate version. The House has taken a totally different approach. They are just simply doubling the state homestead exemption from $2,000 to $4,000. So I'm not sure how this is going to get reconciled before it's all done, but there's two different approaches to providing property tax relief, and we'll see how that goes. There's another one. One of the challenges we've always had, Clearly, we've been fighting short-term rentals. There's a bill that will grandfather in certain short-term rentals if they were being advertised as short-term rentals before the city's regulations went into effect. I don't know that we would have that many that we would be affected by, because we've been out there with our regulations for quite some time. But it's still a preemption bill, which we don't like. I'll never like it. And then there's also one that prevents us from regulating digital currency mining and blockchain mining, from preventing home mining and prohibiting mining or from us prohibiting digital mining and blockchain mining in industrial zoned property. And we have to treat them on a noise basis as any other noise violation. These things consume a lot of electricity, and they're noisy. So a lot of local governments have been regulating that. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to come out, but that's House Bill 1043. If you're a blockchain person and a digital miner, we'll see how that all plays out. A couple other bills, I'm not going to go into them right now, that will, I think, could have some positive impact on Sandy Springs. They're in the early stages. We'll see how they go, and I'll try and give you an update on those later. Anybody else?
Me.
Ms. Rochelle.
Since our last meeting, we've had 2 signs go up at North Springs that we're getting a new North Springs building. So thank you all for going to the meeting. A lot of people have been working on this for 9 years, so very excited about that. And hopefully we're going to have some representatives from Fulton County Schools come periodically to our meetings to give updates.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Paulson.
Come on, babe. Okay. So one quick thing. Before our next meeting, the city is hosting a DEA task force called the HIDED Task Force, High Intensity Drug Traffic Area, I think is what it's called. So we're having it. Essentially, it's a fentanyl seminar that's going to be next Thursday here at, I think that's correct, at 7 o'clock. And so I encourage anybody and everybody who's interested in learning more about this, come. There's a fascinating, sobering hour and a half, but it's enlightening. And as a just aside, I announced this at a neighborhood meeting last night in my neighborhood, and one of my neighbors spoke that he had a nephew who died in December because he went to a party, he took a pill that was his buddy gave him because it was going to give him a buzz. They were going to be able to stay awake and party all night. Dead. So this can happen to everybody, and the more people know about it, hopefully the less chance that someone will take one of these errant pills and wind up dead. So next Thursday, I think there's a flyer on our website.
It is, and yes, sir. And Councilman Paulson, just to add to that, the mother of that young man that tragically died will be speaking during the event next Thursday.
Okay.
Council will recall we had the same presentation
year and a half ago?
Not 2 months back.
It's about 6 months ago.
Yeah. It is, and I echo Mr. Paulson's comments. Everybody in Sandy Springs needs to see and understand what's going on in the world today with these drugs. Any others? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion? Motion to move into executive session. Staff reports. You got any staff reports?
Nothing tonight.
I didn't think so. It wasn't on my notes anyway. All right. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend regular order, move into executive session for the purposes of litigation and real estate.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order and move into executive session for the purposes of litigation and real estate. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the motion for executive session. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in executive session. There will be no further business conducted tonight. We'll go into executive session. We will finish that up. We will return to this room simply for the purpose of adjourning our meeting tonight. Thank you very much.